Hello, welcome to the Snap UK Week 16 review. We've got a full house this week. So with me, Johnny Crash, is Gilo, 4 Inches, Griff, and Jim. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
And whilst there is some news, we're going to cover that in the first game, which is Panthers 30, Washington Football Team 13. And of course, it's the
sure
the
about that score?
Possibly not.
Pretty sure it was Panthers 20, Washington
it was
13.
Yeah, it was Washington. Apologies.
It's the NFC East. The Giants have a chance. It fries our brain.
Yeah, and I do this early in the morning before I started work. But Dwayne Haskins has been released. So 1.5 years into his NFL career, it has not worked out for him at the football team, where he was. Well, in his first season, he missed a snap because he was taking selfies with fans, and in his second year, celebrated the loss to the Seahawks by getting some titties rubbed in his face.
Some do. But it's an immeasurable quality, isn't it? We don't know the number of tits that were in his face, so it's some.
Some titties were in his face.
Could have been one. I mean, that would have been terrible, but could have been.
We've all seen
Total Recall.
It could have been 3.
Yeah.
Or
when you weren't as much as he does.
Or a multiplier of, therein. But it's quite frankly, it's strange in a way, because if it wasn't for an injury to Alex Smith, he wouldn't be on the pitch, and he'd probably still have a job.
So just to put it quite concisely, no one was quite sure why they drafted him at the position they did. He turned out not to be that great. He struggled with the playbook. His behaviour was terrible, and now he's gone. Does that clarify what you were saying, John?
And the old coaching team didn't want him. It was a pick from above, and the new coaching team also didn't like him. So he didn't help himself by just being a bit of a dick. And Rivera's obviously they recognise they're not going to get any trade value for him because he's not very good on the field and he's pretty naughty off the field. So just get rid of him, cut bait.
I think it was different with this one compared to any of the others, because you remember when Arizona got rid of Rosen, there was this kind of minority who, that's silly, it's too early. Think of what you could have done if you'd given him a chance. I have not seen a single positive article about why they should have kept Haskins.
Yeah.
Not one. It's ridiculous. So, but I think it's interesting. And I say this again because I've seen it in damn near every article I've seen. There's always going to be the comparison between him and Daniel Jones.
Yeah, just from the fact that they're same draft class. And I'm not a massive fan of Daniel Jones. I don't think he should have been picked as high as he was, but he's infinitely better than what Dwayne Haskins is. So, fair play to Giants on that one. And you can say, you look at the microcosm of this game, compare Dwayne Haskins' performance against Taylor Heineke's. Heineke played all right. He was fine. 12 and 19, got a touchdown, didn't throw stupid interceptions. Dwayne Haskins, every time he got on the field, he seemed to do very little right. I can't think of many, if any, highlights over the last 2 years that involved Dwayne Haskins and the Washington football team.
Yeah. I was just looking up the town with the most strip clubs per capita is Portland in Oregon, which means he might be on the phone to Pete Carroll, asking for a transfer.
Is it seriously not Vegas?
No. Apparently, it's Portland. This is I'm not going to lie. This was a very quick Google, whilst Jim was just talking there. So
sorry, if I'd have known you were doing such important research, I would have carried on the monologue for a little bit longer. No worries at all.
That's a mutually beneficial trade, though, because they always have kind of a not so good, like in the mould of what was the
Geno Smith,
Brett Hundley, Geno Smith. There's usually a young, quick quarterback on the depth chart behind Wilson, isn't there? It's a mutually beneficial acquisition if you just to go there.
He'll probably be on he'll be on league minimum wage though. So that's how many titties can he pay with that? I don't know, but yeah.
Okay, come on then. I'm going to dive in with the defense of Dwayne Haskins just for the sake of the argument, and then we can move on. He is not an unathletic, untalented quarterback. We have seen him look good when he rolls out the pocket and basically makes the play up. What he isn't is a mature player who can actually follow the instructions he's given. So he needs to be loved at a club in order to fit in and feel like he can do the right things. I think the comparison I made to John was that he reminds me of Johnny Manziel in that it's money and pussy first and football second, and that won't get you anywhere. And he'll get another try somewhere else to prove it, and he could end up like Geno Smith, like Paul was saying, just going round as a serviceable, but you don't really want to see him back up for the next 7 or 8 years. But I don't think it's game over. If he lands with the right coach in the right situation, I think you'll see him playing next year more often than you might imagine. I wouldn't want him. I don't think anybody here would say they would want Dwayne Haskins, but athletically, he's going to be on somebody's roster because he's just too good.
I think there's just too much talent out there at the moment. The quarterback talent, the amount of talent out there. Jameis Winston has got his faults, but he still can't get a game. There is way too much talent out there for him to get any game time. There is no way you see Dwayne Haskins play in the NFL next year unless COVID strikes about half the quarterbacks down.
Well, in a league where you have Mariota and Dalton, I just don't see room for Haskins, especially with a new batch of quarterbacks coming through.
I agree with you, Griff. He is athletic. He does have an element of skill, and but the problem is his character, and this is why I think a lot of teams didn't want him in the draft, and why coming out of a big school, he came from Ohio State, he'd won a lot of games. He dropped to fit like any other quarterback. You'll see Justin Fields this year, probably not going to drop to number 15. He dropped because there's character concerns about him, and it is pretty rare for a player to put behind character concerns. Like there's very few that have ever done it. Jamarcus Russell is another one who he gets labelled with character concerns, he gets labelled with being lazy, and he barely ever plays again.
He's basically like Vince Young in that regard. Yeah. Vince Young was a much better player, but it was once the rumours got out there that he wouldn't cooperate with the coaches, no one touched him.
No coach is going to want that.
Job. And actually, he's a much more accomplished player.
A little bit left field, but just to support Griff slightly, I don't like doing that, but just because he is, 4-on-1, nobody likes that.
Hang on. Before you dive in with that, I'm just making it for the sake of argument. I wouldn't want Dwayne Haskins. I wouldn't take him to my club. I'm just saying.
I'm just gonna support you. Add a little bit of extra potential. So there's a lot of talk that Urban Meyer is going to take a job in the NFL, isn't there?
There is some talk of it, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously he is Ohio State, isn't he? So would he potentially be a landing spot if he took say the Jags finally, move on? Could you take him to the Jags? Well, they're going to take Trevor Lawrence.
I was going to say not with that pick.
But there must be, say he ends up somewhere else, the Lions, and Stafford moves. Could he go there?
I think he will end up somewhere. I think he'll do what Josh Rosen's done this year. He'll end up on a practice squad somewhere. Yeah. Because I can't even see him as being a backup. Because
there's the problem, right? Josh Rosen's a great idea to see what he's going to mould as, because he's not a veteran who can inspire the next player coming through. And he's not young enough and talented enough with enough devoted to the game that someone's going to say, I'll have him and he's going to be my starter by the middle of the season. He's fallen into this gap, the same as Josh Rosen did, where he just doesn't fit where he was. The coaches don't love him and no one's really got anything to go off. beyond the fact that he's athletic, and that is the thing that will keep him in the league. That was my point.
Yeah,
If this was Daniel Jones or name any other number of quarterbacks who aren't athletic as him, I think they're done. But people like Daniel Jones, the reason they get picked where they are is because they are coachable. They will continue to improve, which Daniel Jones has done this season. When he's been fit, Daniel Jones has been a much better version of the player you saw last year. So
only if nobody tackles him.
Well, absolutely, but that's the point.
To be fair, Daniel Jones is good enough to tackle himself.
Yeah. Still the longest quarterback run of the year.
Fell over.
I mean, he might get lucky. He might end up with a QB whisperer, like an Arians, someone like a Gruden's always willing to take a risk. He's got Peterman. There's, look at
he will be picked up before Christmas, before New Year. When's New Year? 4 days from now? 3 days from now? Somebody will pick him up before the next podcast we do, I think. Because he hasn't got to go through waivers. It's not how it works. Somebody will just pick him up and say, we can have him. But
I don't know. I disagree with that. It's going to be...
I just think
he'll get lumped onto a practice squad before the next season starts.
Yeah. The thing is, people are looking ahead to the playoffs now and thinking, right, who's not got COVID? Who can I isolate somewhere that could come in and play? You joke, but it's true. Because some of these teams are going to have bye weeks where players can go off and mingle and do other things. They're going to be trying to keep everything in-house. And a lot of the teams, like Josh McCown, has been... Is it the Eagles, like fourth quarterback, and he doesn't go to the facility? Is it? Right, well, there you go. So... I'm just saying, Haskins has got the opportunity to bounce back quicker than maybe he deserves.
I think that's incredibly optimistic. If you think Dwayne Haskins is coming back onto the team this year, COVID or not COVID, I think the biggest issue with Dwayne Haskins is his inability to learn and to be coached. If you want someone to come in at a very short notice, pick up a playbook, and be able to make some plays, Dwayne Haskins isn't the guy for you.
Yeah, this is one of these arguments where I'm trying to make it interesting, but frankly, he's wasted the opportunity of a lifetime, and he'd be better off just sitting in strip clubs till his money runs out, like Johnny Manziel. Screw him.
Absolutely.
What I'm pleased to say is it means Alex Smith is probably back next year. Any of us thought that was coming, so there you go.
No, I think kind of now with where Washington could end up draft picking wise, I think they could be out for picking one of the top quarterbacks. So. But again, Gary made the point that there's going to be quarterbacks out there that will want to play, and going to Washington with the team they got around them, the defense, the decent coach, they seem like they are building something. They only need that last piece, which is a good quarterback, and I think they could be a playoff team next year.
A couple of other receivers would help.
Yeah.
Somebody other than Terry McLaurin. We've been derailed slightly from the 20-13 result in favour of the Panthers. We ought to get back to that. Panthers basically putting Washington's playoff hopes for this season on ice for one more week. If Washington win, they're in next week. All they've got to do is win. They should have beaten the Panthers. And if they play Heineke, they've got a better chance of winning. If they'd have played him from the start, they probably wouldn't be in a last-ditch scenario. But how much success is that for Ron if he gets this team into the playoffs next week? That's phenomenal, right? He started 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and he reaches the areas that other quarterbacks can't reach.
They're still only going to win maximum 6 games, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Maximum 7 games, yeah.
7 and 9.
I suppose that's... What did they win last year? 4, 5?
3.
Yeah, so their defense is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they've got some extra pieces on an offense, but... it's only because they're in that terrible division. We shouldn't get too carried away. It's a great step forward for a first year with everything he's been through. So I think it's an amazing achievement. But they're still not, they're not a contender.
I mean, they're 7 and 9 and lost to the Giants twice.
Well, they have to beat the Eagles. They have to beat the Eagles. That's all they have to do. And that's an Eagles with isn't it the most changed O-line in the league this season?
Probably. Yeah. They've been massively hit by injuries across the whole team. So, I'd bet on Washington winning next week. That's the death knell if ever there was one. Just because the defense is good enough to stop, I think, pretty much anyone. And if they did get into playoffs, teams aren't they're not going to enjoy playing Washington just because of that defensive line this year. I think it's been amazing.
Yeah. And as well, this result, it was two teams going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it's fair compared to last year. That's what really counts for both of these teams, isn't it?
It is. I think it's time to move on from these two showers, though.
Oh yeah. So we're going to move on to the individual performance of the week, where the 6-9 Vikings 33 against the 11-4 Saints 52. And Alvin Kamara with 6 touchdowns. If you are in fantasy and you manage to lose with Alvin Kamara, you must be shit.
Hey, Griff.
How you doing?
Well, I think that summed up my fantasy season quite well, didn't it? I think I only had one other player score double-digit points. It was pretty poor.
But anyway,
we thought we might do like trophies going forward, and I said I'm just going to send you a wooden spoon. You can just keep it, you know.
Yeah, I think I should.
You don't need to give it back.
I think that's fair. I'm pretty terrible. No, that's fair enough. More importantly, when was the last time a player scored 6 touchdowns?
It was a long time ago.
1954.
Long time ago. Sorry?
1954.
I think it was before that, but go on.
I don't know.
1929.
I knew it was a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
I was right. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. And his name was Ernie Nevers, and he went to the Hall of Fame.
Well.
How many touchdowns at this point last season did Alvin Kamara have?
3.
2. He had 2.
He had 2.
I'm about 30 miles away from you, Jim, and I can feel the bitterness from here.
Yeah, he had 2.
Yeah. That stung, didn't it?
Yeah.
This was the lamest Vikings defensive performance of all time. I think this was the most points they've given up in the NFL. It was the most yards they've given up since 1963. And Mike Zimmer basically called them out after the game and said, "This is the worst bunch of players he's ever coached."
You've got to be. If you're Mike Zimmer, considered a defensive genius, you've got to be literally livid after this game because they just, And I kind of think that Zimmer might be slightly on the hot seat. I don't think he will go, but this team's been going backwards now since they got to the NFC Championship a couple of years back. They've just never looked the same since they've had Kirk Cousins under center, and they've got good players like all across the team. There's a lot of talent there, so you have to kind of start looking at the coaching and wondering. And the ownership has to wonder, like, if we make a change here, who do we bring in that's better to get more out of these? But is it the coaching? Is it Mike Zimmer? Do they need to have a shake-up either on defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator and keep the head coach? Or is it something else that this team just isn't clicking? Is there a lack of leadership? Because, I've never thought of Kirk Cousins being a particular leader of a team. He's average quarterback at best. No, at best, he's a good quarterback. He's an average quarterback probably at worst. But he doesn't win games for you. And his stats aren't terrible for, when was this game? Thursday night? Friday night? Yeah. Losing track of all days, yeah.
Cool. Let me jump in there and tell you the thing that points to where the problem is. The Vikings have scored the most points in losses this season out of any team in the NFL.
So it's all on the defense.
It's not entirely on the offense. Also, while we're talking about that, Dalvin Cook, first Vikings player with 1,500 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns in a single season, beating Adrian Peterson. So the offense isn't the problem. I don't like Kirk Cousins, which is why I thought it was important that I jump in and say it, because I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. But the offense isn't the problem. They've steadily lost pieces on defense and been too slow to replace other pieces. And that does fall on Zimmer because he's a defensive coach. But you'll struggle to find a better coach who's going to get more out of them. I think he's bought himself more than enough for grace to have another season there to do it. If they go the same again next season, or if they don't make the playoffs next season, then he's in trouble. But this isn't by any means a terrible team. It's just a really bad defense.
I disagree. Team's on a downslide. I can't see them making the playoffs next season. What's the point? I just think you're delaying the inevitable. Get rid of him. But I don't think he's going to improve it. You're not going to do anything straight away. He's an old coach as well, isn't he?
He's one of the older coaches, certainly.
And he's had his health problems as well. But I think they have to go into the draft and just be thinking about defense because the pass rush has been poor. Okay, they've not had Daniil Hunter for the whole season. They lost Everson Griffin, and they were two cornerstone pieces of a pass rush. But they have brought in other players. They brought in Ngakwe for a while and then got rid of him because apparently he wasn't very good. I would argue that. But so it's decisions like that you have to kind of wonder where they're being made, who's making them, and why they're being made. Like, what's the decision-making process behind, trading for a player like Ngakwe and then getting rid of him? What was it, 4 or 5 games later of that?
4 games, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some questionable decisions, but I don't know. The fact that they lost Stephon Diggs, replaced him with Justin Jefferson, and got just as much production tells me that something is right with this team, and that they just need to make some adjustments to be in the mix. And I don't think it's a clean sweep scenario for them. I don't think they're changing everything.
As well, the rookie tight end Irv Smith has turned out to be a good red zone target. Not many yards, but lots of touchdowns, so it might be quite useful next year. But as Jim says, should all be on defense going forward because it sucked.
It certainly did. It felt historically bad, and it was. We should credit the Saints though, because Drew Brees didn't throw a touchdown. He threw 2 picks, and they still scored 52 points.
Didn't have to throw a touchdown.
If they can figure out how to win, a bit like we said when the Broncos figured out how to win without vintage Manning, if they can figure out how to win like this without vintage Drew Brees, then you've got to consider them a threat again in the playoffs, which I didn't think they would be. But if they can,
they're the best all-round team, I think. Them or the Colts. They should be, and they've both got aging quarterbacks, but around them are solid running games, solid defenses. The Saints' defense looks good, against the passing game and the run game. There's not many defenses in the league you can say are great against both, but their numbers against both are very good. And I don't think they require Brees. We've seen it with Teddy Bridgewater last year. We've seen it with Taysom Hill this year. It's not about Drew Brees. Yes, he will increase his accuracy stats to 92.8 million %. Because he's only throwing the ball short now. I know that's not a real percentage, Griff. It was like ironic, yeah. But the point is, it's not about him right now. I know he's the figurehead of the organisation and he brings leadership and he brings that stature. But the rest of the organisation is doing it with or without him, and I think they're a real contender. 1 year will be their year.
Well, let's hope it's this year, because next year they go in with $95 million over the cap.
I don't think he'll be there next year.
No, I don't think he will be there.
No, and plus I don't think he'll be there this year. They bought him in the playoffs.
What have you got to lose?
The playoffs?
The playoffs,
Next season.
Yeah, but I think Drew Brees will retire.
Yeah,
so do I.
as well.
But I don't think they've got a chance this year.
Oh, yeah, but when they first seen in the NFC last year.
The NFC isn't amazing this year. The Packers have had a good year. But the rest of the NFC hasn't had a great year.
No. The AFC is harder. That is for sure. This is the 4th straight NFC South Division title for the Saints. They'd only won it 5 times before this streak started. So that's quite a run from Sean Payton. I'm just saying, he's doing very well.
It was only a few years back where there was no team that had won it consistently in past years, was there?
I think it was about 4 years, like 20 years or something.
Yeah, exactly. So,
they've dominated it, basically.
Yeah, and let's face it.
The Falcons just self-destructed after they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And the Panthers did a pretty similar job.
Yeah, true.
So you are talking about, 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl in the last, 6 years or something.
Yeah.
Plus the Buccaneers, who are pretty decent.
Yeah. Who are a year into their rebuild. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd say the last 7 or 8 years, it's been one of the tougher divisions.
Mm.
So that is quite an achievement.
Well, let's move on to the team who are number 1 in the NFC, who beat the Titans 40-14, big win, and as well, first team to complete a game without a single penalty or a punt.
Well, it was nice as well to see that they had that retro kit. It was slightly different to most years because they had some players in black and white stripes this year as well, didn't they?
I thought that this was as dominant a performance in bad weather as you will ever see out of a team. Basically, the Titans got so far behind so quickly they couldn't stick to what they want to do, and Green Bay just kept piling on the pressure. This is straight out of a Matt LaFleur wet dream. This is exactly what he wants to do: rack up the points early, and then just keep the foot on the throat just enough to keep pulling away. This was brilliant. I didn't for a second think that this could happen. I knew once I saw it was in bad weather that my idea that the Titans might upset them was over. But this is why no one wants to play in Green Bay in the playoffs, because you simply can't beat them.
Absolutely. And Devontae Adams is like, the MVP never goes never goes to wide receiver. But if there's any wide receivers having a MVP style season, it's him. He has 17 touchdowns on the year so far. That's more receiving touchdowns than the Panthers, Jets, Washington Giants, and Patriots. One man. And I know we kind of said that there's very little else to throw to in Green Bay, but we kind of mocked them after the draft for not drafting a wide receiver in a very deep wide receiver class. But if Devontae Adams is on the field and Aaron Rodgers is on the field, I don't think you'll worry about it, because the two of them have just got such an amazing link up now. And even the running game is just brilliant. Like AJ Dillon, who sort of person they did draft, he's had his kind of first career day, 21 carries, 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then you got Aaron Jones just sitting there going, yeah, I'll just rush for 94 yards off a mere 10 carries.
Yeah, 9.4 yards a carry.
Yeah, ridiculous. So, and AJ Dillon's one. He looked like a kind of a mini Derrick Henry. He was just bulldozing his way through the Titans' defense. And this is the problem with the Titans, is they have got an amazing offense. I thought Ryan Tannehill played pretty well. AJ Brown and Derrick Henry again had decent enough games, but their defense is just non-existent. And if they come up against a Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, I don't think they're going to be able to stop them, like they've not been able to stop Aaron Rodgers in this game.
You look at any of the teams that are in the playoffs or in the hunt for the playoffs in the AFC, the Titans can't actually stop any of them.
No, they're just going to have to try and outscore them and hope that they can.
And that's all they
keep
can
up
do.
with them.
And I don't think it's enough. And I thought earlier in the year they would correct this problem, but they simply don't have the players to do it.
No, they didn't. I mean, they've been unlucky in injuries. Jadeveon Clowney they brought in for a year, hoping he'd solve the pass rush. He's on injured reserve. They are getting some production out of some of the drafted players on the defensive line, but just not enough. Jeffrey Simmons had a decent year, but there's just nothing else. Like Harold Landry hasn't really matured into a pass rusher that they really wanted to get from him. And Rashaan Evans is all right, but he's not that kind of dominant middle linebacker in the kind of Luke Kuechly or Bobby Wagner mold. He's just another player, quite frankly. And they need to improve on defense if they want to progress. Because I really love watching the Titans play on offense, but on defense it's the complete opposite. It's watching from behind a couch.
I think this, for me, and I agree that there are areas the Titans need to improve, but I saw this more of Green Bay had a really on day. I know we talk quite often about teams having an off day. This was just Green Day having a complete Green Day.
Green Day? Well,
yeah.
I haven't mentioned for ages.
Yeah, Billy Joe Armstrong was at quarterback.
In all fairness, Green Day could have beaten the Titans.
Yeah.
You just got the feeling it just clicked. And I see this as it shows the Packers are Super Bowl worthy, but I don't see this as a complete indictment of the Titans. It's in Green Bay with Green Bay advantageous conditions. It's more an indictment of no one really.
I think that's fair. Like I say, this is why no one wants to play there in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers has 100 or more passer rating in 13 games this season, which is tied for the record, and he can break it next week if they play him, which I'm not sure they will. But that still shows you that what is he now, 37? That's a phenomenal performance from a man we thought had peaked. He's just come back and peaked again. That's incredible. Not many men can peak twice.
But he's feeling the love, isn't he?
Yeah.
Sorry?
He's feeling the love.
He is feeling the love, and that is what it's all about.
I mean, genuinely, it's Jordan Love, isn't it? The quarterback behind him on the depth chart. As a first-round quarterback, there's going to be pressure. And what a perfect way to deal with that pressure from behind.
Yep, absolutely. And that is what you have to do if you want to peak twice. Anyway.
Bucks 47, Lions 7.
Yeah, so
this is a spin ground already.
Yeah.
This was just. Did anybody actually watch this live? Did anybody sit and watch this?
I had it on in the background. Every time I looked up, like the scoreboard just ticked over once more for the Bucks.
It was incredible. Wasn't it the most first half yardage any team's ever given up?
Yeah.
Like it was 400 and something yards at half time. Brady didn't play the second half, and the team still scored 2 more touchdowns.
Yeah, they made Blaine Gabbert look good.
Now let's not forget the Lions had no defensive staff, no head coach, because they'd all got COVID, and that's a very valid excuse that you wouldn't be as good as you perhaps otherwise might be, but. You got the feeling this was the game where the Buccaneers finally clicked, and they really need to do that coming into this point in the season. So, this was incredible. The only touchdown that the Lions scored was it a kick return or a punt return, I think, for a touchdown. And that was brilliant. Like the guy weaved through like 9 players. Other than that, they had nothing to show. Stafford got injured about 10 minutes in, and that might be the last time you ever see him in a Lions uniform because. They're talking about damage to his ankle. If you've got nothing to play for next week, why would you play him?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be playing next week. And I don't think the Lions fans will mind that result, really, because every loss just bumps them up that draft order a little bit more. They're lying 7th at the moment. And they've probably got the chance to go a little bit higher, though the teams will have an absolute dross.
But they drafted 3rd overall last year, and they're still a bag of shit.
Yeah.
That is true. The Bucks clinched their first playoff place since 2007 under John Gruden. And more importantly, for someone who's watched him all these years, this is Brady's 12th straight season in the playoffs. He's switched teams and still done it, which is the longest streak ever by a quarterback.
Never to be broken.
Before the season, we were saying who's won this? Is it Brady or Belichick? Brady or Belichick? Right now, it's Brady hands down.
How much longer do I have to sit through these Brady loving stats every week? How many more do you can find?
Probably a couple of years.
I want to tone down the Brady love a bit. We've got to tone down the Brady love a bit. Evans, Godwin, Gronk, Brown.
Yeah.
He should be doing mega yards with that receiving core.
Yeah, but it didn't work at the start of the season. It wasn't brilliant. It's good to see. The pass to Gronk and the catch, more importantly, was incredible. Because only Gronk would catch that. And
I've got Evans and Gronk in my fantasy team. I loved the game. Don't get me wrong. I was getting notifications. My phone wouldn't shut up. It was great. But they're coming good at the right time. However, the Lions are terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can read too much into this game, can you?
If you want to move on from the Brady stats, then the other 2 things you need to know is that Brady is 8-0 versus teams below 500 this season, and only 2-5 against teams with winning records.
That's the problem.
And that this is the 5th time this season the Lions have allowed 40 or more points, which is their worst record since 1948.
It's also a problem. I thought this is the first time Mike Evans looked like Mike Evans. Yeah, I don't think he's. If this is the beginning of a gelling between Brady and Evans, I think that bodes well for the playoffs. But it's certainly his best game this year. But he looked like the Mike Evans we've come to know and love.
Well, it's great. You ain't going to play the Lions in the playoffs, though.
No.
So, yeah. Well, moving on, because it's a trouncing. And I didn't. But I thought the Rams would win this. I don't think they, after their humiliation at MetLife, Rams 9, Seahawks 20, and as well they've, Goff is injured.
So John Wolford, everyone, John Wolford trying to win the way into the playoffs. A man who's never thrown a regular season pass. That's why you don't know.
They should go out and get Dwayne Haskins. He's athletic.
Well, you probably take him over John Wolford. More importantly, Goff is now a problem. This isn't. This is 1 or 2 games of a slump. This is a year and a half out of the last 2 years where he's not been very good. This is a problem for the Rams now. You cannot rely on him. The Seahawks only scored 20 points. It's not like they blew them away. It was 20-9.
Yeah, Goff's problem seems to be when he actually gets too much time in the pocket, which sounds odd because that should be, manna from heaven for most quarterbacks. It's almost like that his reads aren't good. He can't see the whole field. And if he's got too much time, I think in his head, he generally starts panicking about who he's going to throw to. If he's making split-second decisions, i.e. first read, blocked, second read open, throw, pass, complete, done, he's actually pretty good. It's when he's like looking around the field and then no one's open. I don't think he's got confidence in himself to fit a ball into a really tight window. Watch it. He's not good enough. He needs to be. He needs to have that instinctive short passing game. Anything else, and he's screwed. And that's why his numbers are bad. He's like 5.4 yards per attempt. He gave up 3 sacks. He had an interception. He just looked bang average. But
not a pussy. Dislocated his thumb, popped it back in again, cracked on.
Not a pussy. That is true. Although it turns out his thumb may be broken, hence why you're seeing John Wolford next week. Yeah. I mean, you can't fault him there. The thing is, he's now given away the ball the most times out of any quarterback since the start of last season, passing Carson Wentz for that stat, by the way, because Wentz hasn't played the last few weeks. What does that say about those two, who were supposed to be franchise faces for 10 years plus?
Yeah, I mean, that's 1 and 2 in that draft, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've got what they wanted out of them. The Eagles have got a Super Bowl. The Rams have got an NFC Championship. What more do you want?
A Super Bowl?
Well, I think it's a fair point. I see what you're saying. The other thing from this game, do you not think it's interesting that the Seahawks haven't conceded more than 20 points in their last 5 games after the start to the season they had? This is why you pay Pete Carroll, because they have turned this defense round and it is now extremely viable.
I'm sorry. They played the Rams, Washington, Jets, Giants, Eagles, and Cardinals, and then the Rams again.
It's not my fault who the schedule throws up. I'm just telling you they've been a lot better, and they have.
Yeah, okay. Their stats have been better, but that's 5 games of a lot of averageness, and they got beaten by the Giants, let's not forget.
But that's Jamal Adams becomes healthy and suddenly they become better on defense. That's not a coincidence.
No.
Also true.
But it does leave the Rams in a funny situation because it could literally be John Wolford against Chris Stravella at quarterback next week in a battle for a playoff spot.
It's not what anyone wants to see.
No. The Rams have never done well with backup quarterbacks for a few years. They had Sean Mannion behind Goff for years.
Yeah, and it wasn't good. They don't invest in that position. More importantly, I think they need to be a run-first team as soon as they can't. Didn't Cam Akers miss this game?
Yeah.
Yes, he didn't play.
And how good were they when he has been fit?
Much
they
better.
Have been so good. They need to be a run-first team. They will struggle with Darrell Henderson is fine for 6 or 7 carries a game. He's got good burst. That's fine. Malcolm Brown is a bit of a bulldozer. That's fine. But they've got no out-and-out lead back when Cam Akers isn't playing. And Goff isn't good enough to cover up for that deficiency.
No, absolutely not. Do you think there was an odd period of play where I think it was coming to the end of the game or the end of the first half where Josh Reynolds took a pass, quickly put the ball back down, and the Seahawks picked it up because he wasn't actually touched.
Yes.
Luckily, he got away with it, but it was one of those moments like, oh, you just made a huge error. It wasn't pretty funny.
Yeah, that was a problem for them.
Let's move on to basically a toilet bowl of a game. But I love organised chaos. Eagles 4-10-1, 17. Cowboys 6-9, 37. So Cowboys clinging on to the chance for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
Just they need to basically outdo Washington next week.
No, outdo the Giants, don't they?
Yeah, they play us.
Yeah,
it's Eagles Washington.
It's Eagles Washington. You'd say that probably Washington have got the harder game there.
Yeah.
And that makes me think that there's a good chance the Cowboys are going into the playoffs despite having been horrible. Now, in terms of squad, you'd say that they are far and away the best squad.
Mm-hmm.
But this coaching staff does not deserve any praise that it will get if they get into the playoffs. The only positive for me really is that Zeke got 100 yards and Andy Dalton has actually been functional now the O-line is working, which is what we said all along was going to be his biggest difference between him and Dak. Is he's not going to ad-lib plays out of the pocket, is he? He's a statue. But if you keep him upright, you've got brilliant receivers on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And they all play well. Michael Gallup had an amazing game, making some absolutely outrageous catches. On the other side of things, I think Jalen Hurts had an all right game. He made a few pretty basic errors. I think it was a bit more of a come down with Jalen Hurts, but you're going to see that from a rookie quarterback.
After half-time, the Cowboys adjusted, and they took him out of the game, basically.
And I think that's going to be the problem with Jalen Hurts, is when people do figure out his game and they can figure out what he's about, is he then going to be performing to what he was in the last couple of weeks? And we're yet to find out. I think if he is the starter next season, we'll find that out and find out how good he really is. But to be fair to him, he's still got a terrible offensive line in front of him. He's playing with receivers who, I mean, Deshaun Jackson was your number one receiver, just the fact that he had one long catch. And then Quez Watkins was number 2.
That sounds like you sneezed.
Yeah, exactly. The defense was without Fletcher Cox, and still haven't got any cornerbacks really of note apart from Darius Slay. It's just a bad team. And what's worse is, when we were looking at this earlier, they go into next season 71.5 million over the cap.
Yeah, it's a massive rebuild. I was looking for some positives. The positive in terms of Jalen Hurts is there's only one other quarterback who's rushed for 50 yards in each of their first 3 starts, and it's Lamar Jackson. So at least Hurts is showing that he's got some credentials to improve. And you can't, like you've just given the example, you can't blame him for this team. He's definitely they've been a much better team without Wentz under center. No one can dispute that. And the only other positive is they finally got Deshaun Jackson involved. Now, again, their whole receiving group will be gone next year. Alshon Jeffrey is, what did we say, 18 million?
18 million.
Yeah.
I think this is the last year of Deshaun Jackson's contract, and I don't think you renew him. But at least it showed that there is something there and they're still playing as a team. But do you know what I want to get back to? Because I said this at the time. Do you remember, was it the first or second game of the season, they elected to basically punt the ball and go for a tie in overtime?
Mm-hmm.
Is where they're won.
It was the second game, I think.
Yeah. And now imagine if they'd have showed some balls and actually gone for what I think was like a 57-yard field goal or a 55-yard field goal and scored. They'd be right in the playoff hunt. Like, you'd be there right at the top of the division. And you didn't bother because you were too scared. It's pathetic.
It just shows how bad this division is, though. I mean, a couple of years ago, we were saying how good the NFC is. Like, it was much better conference. Like, every division was hard, and the AFC had like the Patriots and maybe the Steelers on the day. It's completely flipped around this year.
Yeah.
Like, their AFC, there's going to be a team who probably have 10 wins who aren't going to get in the playoffs, and there's going to be a team on 7 and 9 who do get into playoffs on the NFC side. That just shows just how quickly the NFL can change and how bad the NFC East is.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the Titans, if they all win out, potentially you could have a team on 11 wins in the AFC, not getting in the playoffs.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Well, let's go to Bears, who continue to hold their own destiny in their own hands. 8-7. They ended beating the Jags 41-17. I don't think there's much to say here. The Jags suck.
But
I don't think the Jags really tried. I think
this was incredible. It's the first time the Bears have scored 30 or more points in 4 consecutive games since like 1960. Yeah. This was an absolute hosing. Obviously, the Jags were not playing. They said they'd had a quarterback competition all week, and Mike Glennon won. That was a fucking lie because Paul would have won that.
No. They had a quarterback competition, and Mike Glennon was the worst, so he won.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what happened. They just went with who gives us the biggest chance to lose, and that's fine. That's what they've got to do. But this wasn't even a matchup. But you've got to credit the Bears. Since Matt Nagy gave up play calling, which is what he was there for, by the way, they've been a much better team. And it now comes down to, who are you extending, Matt Nagy or Mitch Trubisky? Because you're not doing both. but one of them's getting another deal.
Well, one way or another, they're both in the team, and the team's now winning again. So as long as Matt Nagy stays off offensive play calling, you could say that he's back to being in a position where he's a good coach again. And how the tide has turned there.
Yeah.
But we always said if they could get the offense just to give them something, the defense is that good that they stand a chance in pretty much any game. They're playing Green Bay next week. If Aaron Rodgers isn't playing, they've got a really good chance of getting into the playoffs.
Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones probably won't play that game.
Will Devontae Adams play?
Devontae Adams. Because why would you?
Exactly. You've got the number 1 seed. There's literally nothing for them to play for.
The only reason that makes me think the Packers won't rest everybody is because it's the Bears.
Yeah.
And they don't want to lose to the Bears. So, I don't know. Sense tells you rest everybody because of the way the season's gone. But, Gary, what do you think about this Bears team? He's on mute. Somebody tell him he's on mute. He's mute.
Gary, on mute.
He's still on mute and he's not listening to any of us.
No.
Oh, here we go. He's got to start his argument all over again.
David Montgomery has scored something like 6 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prior to that, he scored 4 all season.
Yeah.
So I think it's been like Trubisky coming back into the team. I think was the best decision. Foles just isn't the future. So you might as well at least just see, just keep going with Trubisky. The upside to Foles wasn't big enough. I know Jim will probably disagree, but I don't think there was a big enough upside with what they saw when they changed it. They were like 5-1 when they dropped Trubisky. Were they 5-1?
Yeah, they were.
The wins have come with the change. Okay, it coincided with the change of quarterback, but Montgomery has been better with his new offensive coordinator, and that's made a huge difference.
Definitely. And then you're not asking Trubisky to throw the ball 40 times. He still threw the ball 35 times this week. Completed 24, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. His game hasn't changed that much. It's just that Montgomery's going to get you 100 yards and probably a touchdown. And that changes, that does change. It takes the pressure off, means you can burn a bit more.
It's all about balance.
Yeah, you control the clock.
Defense off the team, off the field. And I think keeping that defense fresh by running the ball more, that's been the difference. So I think this Bears team, I wouldn't expect it to go far if it squeezes into the playoffs. It's between them and the Cardinals, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yep.
So
it's win and in for the Bears basically, and you can't fault what they've managed to do since they lost. What was it, 5 or 6 in a row?
6 in a row, yeah.
It's incredible the turnaround, but like you say, they won't go far. But for what it's worth, I don't think there's anything to be lost in keeping Trubisky if you can get him on a good enough deal. Maybe let him go and explore free agency.
Robinson looks superb, hasn't he, the last few weeks as well?
And actually, I think they're a team that could, because they're a team that look brilliant for playoffs. It's not particularly risky what they do. The defense is great. It would be different, I guess, if you were playing in Chicago, which they won't be. But I would not want to play the Bears right now.
No.
I mean, if you're looking at teams like Seattle, LA, Washington, the Bears will beat them. And then you've got possibly something like a David Montgomery going against the Packers defense, which has not been very particularly good against the rush all year. I would not want to play the Bears right now.
As it stands, if we were going to the playoffs after week 16, they'd be playing the Saints. They would have the Bears would have the 7th seed, and they'll be going to New Orleans. That would be an interesting match, if nothing else.
It would be an interesting match. Yeah, they'll give anyone an interesting game as long as they turn up in tip-top condition.
I think you're forgetting playoff Bears, though. Playoff Bears is a different.
That's because they're very forgettable. They very rarely get there.
Well, but last one in the playoffs, it was a double doink. Otherwise, if it wasn't that, then the Eagles don't get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's just something about them. On paper, they're a very good team, but they don't play on paper.
I know. I'm just saying. We'll quickly go on to the 49ers 20, Cardinals 12. Not much, 49ers.
Don't really want to talk about this game, to be fair.
just really
Peter Hart played well.
Peter Hart played well. Jeff Wilson had a career game, 183 yards. Kittle's back, 4 receptions, 92 yards. You know, when you get your good,
still good, isn't it?
Yeah, when you get your good players back, suddenly good things happen.
You don't need to change much at the Niners beyond luck. That's all it is. Who starts under centre next season for the Niners?
Oh, I don't know.
Someone else.
I mean, Shanahan came out yesterday and said that it's going to be Jimmy next year.
Did he?
He did, yeah. He press conference said that Garoppolo is our man going into 2021. So, you know.
That's someone from the draft.
Yeah, it could. I mean,
Haskins.
No, God, no, please no. I personally would love to see them get really aggressive in the draft, trade up, you know, trade next year's number 1 pick and this year's, and get into like the top 5 and pick kind of a Zach Wilson or even Justin Fields. I'm not really sure about that one after Dwayne Haskins coming out of Ohio State. So, but I don't think that'll happen. I think they'll find, it'll either be Jimmy or they'll find a retread somewhere.
And on the Cardinals, I mean, do you think they're in the playoffs at the end of next week?
No. Who are they playing?
They're playing
the Rams.
The Rams.
Well,
yeah,
they
possibly.
are. It's because the Rams couldn't score points. At the moment, I'm going to say no. I think this is. I just think the Rams' defense will shut down. If Kyler plays like this, and he played okay, but he didn't play well.
He might not be playing. He left. He didn't finish the game, didn't he? He's injured.
Yeah,
so it could be 2 backup quarterbacks.
If it's the 2 backups, you'd go with who's got the better defense that's going to turn the other team's backup over. It's the Rams. So I say no, but it's a year too early for the Cardinals anyway. They would be the biggest blowout waiting to happen in the playoffs. So nothing lost, really.
I think it's a shame for the Cardinals that Larry Fitzgerald's last game will be in front of no people.
Fair point.
I agree with that. They're a year away, but they've still got enough elements within that team that if they did make the playoffs, they could surprise people. They won't win it, but they could win their first game in it.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll discuss playoff picture in the AFC. Welcome back to part 2 of the snap. We're now heading into the AFC playoff picture. So let's start, as we usually do, with the number 1 seed in the AFC, the Chiefs, 14-1, beat the Falcons 17-14. Once again, another tight Chiefs victory, and actually could have gone into overtime if Koo had made his kick right at the end, but.
That's the first missed kick in the last 28 attempts that he made. Look, it's unfortunate, but it felt very Falcons at the end. I don't think anyone thought he was actually going to put that kick through, even though he'd been so good. It sort of sums up their year, to be honest.
It was curse of the commentator completely, wasn't it? Because they made such a point of it.
Do you not think, though, that once again, this is very telling of how the Chiefs are just not putting teams away this year? They were so poor in the first half.
Former champions.
Yeah. I think that they're doing just enough to win, aren't they, every week? And I think come the playoffs, I think there's going to be a few. I think there's a few tricks up the sleeve of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And I think there's going to be almost not a completely different team, but I think come the playoffs, I think we're going to see a slightly different Chiefs team that is a little bit more dominant than they're currently being. They're literally just going out there, getting the job done, staying fit, get back into the changing room next week, same again.
It's very Patriots.
It is very Patriots.
Yeah. I understand that. I want to remind you that last season they went into the playoffs where they 13-3, which, by the way, this is the first time they've ever won 14 games in a season. But they went into the playoffs 13-3, and at half time against the Texans they were 24-0 down.
Yeah,
and you will not win every one of these games where you let a team slip in front. And I just think is why I want to see a bit more from them.
But they're doing the opposite. They're getting not this week, but previously they've been doing just getting up ahead. And, all right, we'll take our foot off the gas. If they come a bit close, we'll throw another touchdown to Tyreek Hill, and he'll have another 100 yards. That's what they're doing. They're doing just enough to win and not exert themselves, realising it's a long season. There's still a long way to go. They've got to stay fit. They've got the bye week, which is a massive help for them. And come the playoffs, come the division round, I think we're going to see, like I said, I think we're going to see a more dominant Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay. I'm just saying you can't pull that off forever. At some point, you've got to show who you are, and they need to do that soon.
But I don't think they want to do that now because then more teams have got more videotape on them. I think that's what I'm saying. That there's going to be more trick plays come out. There's going to be slightly different, just not massively different, just enough difference that defensive coordinators, whoever they play in the first game of the playoffs, go, we didn't see that on the tape. Oh, we've not prepared for that, and that's what Andy Reid wants to do.
It feels very much like the Patriots of 2 or 3 years ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does, and that's fine. Like, I'm not saying you can't win. It's just a slightly dangerous way. I just feel watching them that they're, like you say, maybe they are just holding back, or maybe they're not as good as last year. I'm not sure.
Also, they had to play with a running back who they're not used to. You could see they were trying different things by getting Mahomes to do catching, and he can't.
Travis Kelce tied for the most receiving touchdowns by a tight end with 11. Tied Tony Gonzalez from 1999, so he'll be looking to break that game. That record.
I'm sure he will.
Didn't he ever take Kittle as well, most receiving yards for a tight end in a season?
Yes, he did.
Got over 1,400, first tight end ever.
Not bad.
It's not bad for an old guy, is it?
Yeah.
No. What are the chances though that the Chiefs would have Tony Gonzalez and Kelce in both, like, they're now like number 1 and number 2 all time. It's incredible.
Yeah.
What's the chances?
Same as the Packers having Favre followed by Rodgers, though, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Tyreek Hill, I think, very quiet this week. Only 4 catches. I think he went into the game injured.
He's been fairly quiet in spate throughout the season. He's only had 1 or 2 memorable games, to be fair. And this is part of the issue. Like, I don't know whether teams have figured him out or whether he's not been fit for most of the year, but that just doesn't look like the same connection that they had last year.
I don't know. This week he definitely looked off the pace a bit, but he did, as well. I was watching the game with Steve, our mate Steve, and of course, as Tyreek Hill is one of the 3 NFL players that he's aware of. He was stressing out totally with Tyreek Hill not getting like 300 yards and 6 touchdowns. But I mean,
doesn't it show you something how good this team is? He's got 15 touchdowns. He's got nearly 1,300 yards, and we think there's games where he's been invisible.
Yeah.
We make it sound like he's having a bad season. That's how good this team is.
Yeah.
This team has become a front-running team. Like the criticism last year was that they started slowly, allowed people to get a lead. And in this game, they came from behind. But in most of the games this year, they've been a good 10 points up in the second half. And they've just taken time off the clock, and they just haven't had to do what they had to do last year. I think if they have to do it, they can still do it.
I could see them resting.
Not, then why would you bother?
Yeah, I could see them resting a lot of their players for the game against the Chargers, and they'll give players like Tyreek Hill. You'll see Kelce come on and play, and he get touchdown, then you might not see him for the rest of the game. They'll give them 2 weeks off. You see, because they've got the bye already. There's nothing left for Kansas to play for, as far as I can tell. So it's job done. They can go into the playoffs completely fresh. They might, hopefully, if they get Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, so that's another weapon. And I think we'll see. Like I said, we'll see them kind of properly play the Chiefs way that we probably expected them to come the playoffs. I think they're just keeping secrets in their back pocket, ready for the playoffs. This team can score at will. Like I said, as soon as a team looks like getting close to them, they go off and score a touchdown.
Yeah, as soon as you start to believe, you're fucked.
Yeah.
What Gary says. For the Falcons, it's January can't come soon enough.
It's been a good recovery from them after the start to the season, but that's all it is, isn't it? It's just it's starting something new, isn't it? Trying to get some momentum for next year. That's all it is.
I think
the season's done. It was done weeks ago.
Yeah, the biggest question for them is what they do at quarterback. Do they completely start again with a new GM, a new coach, and a new quarterback, or do they keep Matt Ryan in place?
What would you do?
I'd keep Matt Ryan.
Depends on how much cap space, doesn't it?
Well,
depends on how much cap he's taken.
But at the end of the day, you've got a former MVP quarterback there versus you
could got a former MVP quarterback as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Cam Newton's going to ruin the former MVP argument.
But Matt Ryan's still playing well. Like he had 300 yards and 2 touchdowns against Super Bowl team. Like he's still playing well. Like,
must make the job more attractive to keep him.
Exactly. Why risk it? You've got a top. You're probably going to have a top 4 pick in the draft. You've got to strengthen that defense. You could bring in a player like Micah Parsons, who is a worldie at linebacker, and start to solidify a defense, which has been their problem for the whole year. They've had no issues really scoring. Okay, they've only scored 14 points this week, but they've consistently been scoring points. They've still got Ridley. They've still got Jones. I think there's more to come from a lot of their players. They could find a running back deeper in the draft, but they've got to fix that defense. It's terrible.
As I say, what Ryan needs most of all is a running back, because the ones he's got, I don't think they trust.
Just bang average.
They are. I mean, Gurley gets a lot of touchdowns this season, but
force.
When they went to the Super Bowl, they had Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman.
Mm.
Well, they pointed out during the broadcast that Ito Smith's technically the workhorse, and Todd Gurley just does the goal line work. And that is exactly, if you go back to our first podcast of the season, I said by the middle of the season, the knees will be shot. They'll be nursing him. He is not a viable player for them. And it's turned out to be so. And that is exactly what they need.
They've got Ledley King at running back.
We go back to
such a good reference.
Let's move on, because good comeback here from the Steelers, both in the game and for their offense. 24-28 against the Colts. Colts, at one point, looked like they had this sort of...
They were 24-7 up.
Yeah.
At half time.
Just imagine if the quarterback was clutch.
It's the biggest comeback in Tomlin's career
yes, it is.
As a coach in the second half, isn't it, I believe?
I believe you're correct. Look at you weighing in with a stat. Somebody must have piped that to you. I think the thing that's notable about this game is that the Colts are now on the outside looking in for the final playoff spot, and that how Philip Rivers would that be to win 10 games and not make the playoffs? To choke right at the end. That would be the most Philip Rivers season, because this team doesn't deserve to not be in the playoffs, but it's now entirely possible.
Yeah,
it's them versus the Browns now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's either going to be Oso Rivers or Oso the Browns.
Exactly. You got there were some good things out of the Colts, but honestly, this was all about how finally we saw the Steelers' offense come back to life. Not just after a couple of games, but after about 5 games since they've been any good. And also their defense, TJ Watt stepped up when it was absolutely necessary in the second half. It's incredible. He got now the most games with 2 or more sacks in a season by a Pittsburgh player. I think, is it 10 games this season he's had 2 or more sacks? Like, that's incredible. Everything clicked at the right time. They need to take this into the playoffs. They could very quickly revert back the other way again. That's the problem.
Still have a bit of worry on the rushing game, though. I mean, James Conner was playing, but 5 carries for 20 yards. I don't know if that's a symptom of him being bad or not getting up to speed, or the fact they were just chasing the game for so long.
Yeah, their running game's been very, very poor. And usually we blame the O-lines, but actually this O-line's come back together quite well. Yeah. It's just the running backs haven't been very good.
Yep.
Yep.
Do you know when was the last time the Colts beat the Steelers with a quarterback starting for them who wasn't called Peyton Manning?
1984.
Yes, it was. What was the guy's name? Mark Herman. 1984.
Was that a known fact, Paul? Or was that just a massive shot in the dark?
I saw that stat earlier and it amazed me.
As if you jumped for that. Right, anyway, go on.
Just wondering. He said it quite convincingly, so I presume he did know.
The one big thing for the Colts off the back of this is they've got the Jags next week.
Yeah.
And that's a Jags team who you can see by the way their fans are reacting.
Yeah,
they don't want anything.
We're going to get... I assume, John, we're going to get to the Browns in a minute, but I really think the Colts are in the driving seat here.
I do as well, because it's been announced today that the Steelers are going to be starting Mason Rudolph next week.
Nice.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a real kick in the teeth for Garrett, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's not a smash in the face for Rudolph. But
3 days late for another red nose, I think.
Let's move on, because probably one of our favourite teams this year is the Bills, who beat the Patriots 38-9, and Josh Allen, is not a surprise. Is really good. Stephon Diggs is really good, and the Patriots aren't.
Yeah, that
analysis.
Anyone want to take this?
I think we mentioned the stat earlier about Josh Allen.
I could not watch it. It was so important for my fantasy championship decider. I couldn't watch it because I was sick with worry that Steve might win. As well, I needed Josh Allen to get between 28 and 35 points, because I had him in one league and I was playing against him in my work league. So he did it beautifully. I beat Steve by about 4, and I beat the guy in the work league by 2.
Well, good for
Josh
you.
Allen, MVP.
He also helped me beat you, Jim.
Yeah, I know.
This is
the shit happens.
The
Go on,
second
Griff.
ever longest.
Let's let Griff go on his monologue.
Second ever longest winning streak by a franchise was broken. They now won't have a 500 or plus season. Which team has the record for the longest winning streak of seasons?
Cowboys.
Steelers.
It is the Cowboys from.
Oh, in the 90s.
Yeah,
90 to 2001.
I think it was 65 to 85.
Oh, right, okay.
But regardless, it was a long time anyway. You're right. This pretty much sums up the Patriots in a nutshell. No one expected them to win, but they were far, far worse than even I had hoped. And I said to you before we started, there were passes that Cam Newton can't make that were 5 or 6 yards down the field that any one of us would have made. We are just showing you what happens if you play Wildcat every week, because that's all he is a running back. That's all he is.
It's like what happens if you have a whole season with Taysom Hill.
That
experiment's been done for Sean Payton.
But Taysom Hill is better because he can throw the ball. Cam can't throw the ball. We also had
touchdowns at Gillette Stadium versus Josh Allen's 4.
Yeah.
But the Cam's are 2 for the season.
Yeah.
Josh's is in like 3 quarters.
I think I've gone over it 100 times. I don't know what the plan is. I don't see how we rebuild and are already better next season. But in Bill we trust. This is dire. I said 8-8 at the start of the season. I'd have been happy with that. But to be this bad is not what I expected. We do get 8 players back from the COVID reserve, so let's cling on to that. Hope that helps.
I think you've got
any of them a
4
quarterback
years of pain to come. And
I think we've got a few. Yeah. I think we've got a few.
And when you look at the age and the talent on the teams in the division, and this is how the sport is supposed to work, obviously, as well. You're not supposed to win forever. So I think, you're going to have to just suck it up and let us enjoy it, really. It's going to be great.
But bar Cam Newton's play, you haven't actually heard me complain too much about the team losing. I can't fault the way the system works, and we've been so lucky for so long.
Not on the podcast, no.
I think that's massively unfair. I think
you've been all right, actually. You've been all right. I know.
I did say at the start of the season, 8-8 would be the best we could hope for.
Hang on, to be fair, Griff, even when the Patriots were winning, you were slating them anyway. So
it's far harder to watch your team in the Super Bowl. Just you've only had that experience a couple of times.
Yeah, twice in the last 7 years. We lost both of them.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm
going to won some.
I'm really hoping this is, everybody's thinking like Bill has a plan. When players went on the COVID reserve list, people thought that was a plan. I'm hoping there is no plan, and his plan for retirement is literally just to drive this off a cliff. Just tank it as hard as you can. And then
Go and take over at the Giants for a couple of years. That'd be amazing.
Just trying to protect his legacy, isn't he?
We should credit Stephon Diggs for being just an amazing receiver. We were talking about Devontae Adams earlier. Stephon Diggs is pushing him all the way this season. He has been brilliant.
How the hell did I get him in the 5th round of fantasy?
I don't know.
That's a very good question.
No one thought Alan would be accurate enough to pick him up.
Yeah. And look, that's coming back to kind of Dwayne Haskins. You look at Josh Allen. They were, Josh Allen, I think, was drafted 9th, so not a million miles away from Haskins. Allen had deficiencies in his game, and accuracy was the biggest one. The difference between the two is he's gone away. He's worked on it over the last couple of years. He's developed. He's worked with coaches. He's worked with quarterback coach Jordan Palmer, and he's got better. And if you're a coach and you draft a quarterback, you want to see them progress. You don't expect them to be MVP year 1, Super Bowl year 2. That's a fluke. It very rarely happens, Mahomes aside. You just want to see progression each year, and that's what Josh Allen gives, and that's not what Dwayne Haskins gives. And that's what that's what you look for in characters. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to get better. I want to get better for this team. And it's about the team for Allen. And you look at how he interacts with other players like Stephon Diggs. There's a great video going around of them having a laugh before the game where Josh Allen takes the mick out of Stephon Diggs' dance. That's the kind of camaraderie you want to see. You never saw that with Haskins, but with Haskins, it was about him. And that's why Haskins won't be on a team, and Josh Allen will get a massive contract in the next couple of months.
Let's see if Paul's been reading all the facts. When was the last time the Bills swept the Patriots in a season?
Well, I think that's a very good point, Michael. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to stall you completely.
No.
It was that up. Is that all right?
1996.
No. I was going to say 97.
No, it was 1999. But here's the context. Josh Allen was 3. He was 3 years old. And Bill Belichick was the defensive coordinator at the Jets. So there you go. It's been a long time.
I remember 1999. That makes me feel really old. Shit. Okay, well, let's move on because the Jets' winning streak
continues.
It's now a streak. It's now a streak.
If it hadn't been for Greg Williams being a massive C word the week before as well, this streak's high, the streak would be even longer.
Well, no, they had a loss in between, didn't they?
But they can't even suck at sucking.
Yeah.
Well, you do realise this is. Everyone seems to think, oh yeah, no, the players and the coaches want to do what the back room suggests.
Yeah, they don't.
And that's it. They don't. The players and the coaches want to win because, unlike the GMs, their job's on the line at the end of the season.
Yeah.
It's just quite often the GMs will do what they will do what they can to get in the way. But just looking.
You make a good point.
In between the Raiders game, they did lose to the Seahawks 40-3. So it's but still they're still an awful team. But the Browns are hamstrung by the fact that they didn't have any wide receivers. They just kept throwing it to one
Austin
or two tight ends.
Yeah, okay. So their entire wide receiver core was taken out by COVID. The only player that they had receiving the ball that I'd ever heard of was Marvin Hall, who I think was on the Lions team a couple of years ago. Has bounced around various practice squads ever since. Otherwise, it was all a bunch of I think John was next up, wasn't he, for the Browns? And obviously that does have an effect. I understand
just a bit.
But why then throw the ball so many times? This should have been the Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt running show, and they didn't do it.
Yards they had by half time, or something like near half time. It was 3 rushing yards or something ridiculous, wasn't it?
That's just absolutely.
What is that about?
Nick Chubb, 11 attempts for 28 yards and a touchdown. Kareem Hunt, 4 attempts for 11 yards and a touchdown. You have to be able to run in this game. You cannot ask Baker to throw nearly 53 passes in this game.
You can't blame the running game, though. You can't blame the run because you've got nothing else. What are you going to do? Just stack the box? What else can you do?
You can blame the running. The way the play calling was done was dreadful. It was
I don't know.
bad.
So Kareem Hunt is a catching back, and then you've got Nick Chubb, who runs through most defences in the league. He's that good.
Yeah.
So you surely there's enough with those two plus a tight end, plus a wide receiver. It's just throw and catch at the end of the day off the practice squad. Surely that's enough to do something different.
Yeah.
You only get 3 goes. You only get 3 goes unless you get 10 yards. So surely you can mix it up a little bit in those 3 goes.
But it's so easy for the Jets defensive coordinator because you don't have anyone there to stretch. It's not like Austin Hooper suddenly turned into a bloke who's going to do a 4-second 40-yard dash.
You're not stretching the field, but still.
No.
But still, they needed to establish the run and they failed badly. And this is such a Browns way to come crashing to an end of the season, to lose to the Jets like this.
The 2 unluckiest franchises going, one of them had to be more unlucky. And I'm always going to, if it's unlucky, I'm going with the Browns.
Yeah.
And
you always would. I've heard you use that excuse before. Okay.
My proctologist.
Baker has only ever won 1 game when he's been sacked 4 or more times. He's like 1-9 when he's been sacked 4 or more times. He got completely discombobulated by the pressure they were putting on him. He then fumbled twice in their last 2 possessions to give the ball away. You can't blame the wide receiving group that was there, and maybe you don't want to blame the running backs for not doing a better job, but you can blame Baker. You just hold on to the ball one of those 2 times, and you probably win this game.
Yeah.
Blame Baker.
Well, I don't think they win, but because you were just turgid. But yeah,
they still gave up 23 points against what is a pretty average offense as well.
Of course it is, but the Jets actually have been playing all right recently.
Yeah, but they still gave up not a massive amount of points, but probably more points than you'd expect to give up against the Jets. And there's nothing wrong with the defense.
Don't forget, one of those touchdowns was a 43-yard pass from Jamison Crowder, by the way, which was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, lovely.
The Jets have basically turned up at the end of the year when they've got nothing to play for. Frank Gore, by the way, crossed 16,000 rushing yards.
And then got injured. So that could be the last we see of Frank Gore. He's going to miss week 17, unfortunately.
It could be.
Which is a sad way to go out.
He'll be back on a shitty team next year.
Probably back with the Jets. One highlight for me, sorry, Griff, it was like seeing Sam Darnold play over the last couple of weeks. He's actually played well. And he had a great run. And I compare it to kind of Goff made a run against Seattle and dived on the floor short of the first down marker. Sam Darnold went ploughing into a linebacker and knocked him backwards.
Stiff-armed him.
Yeah. And,
he's playing like a man who knows he now has the opportunity to stay there and actually be the franchise quarterback. And I think the fact that they're not going to be picking first may well save his Jets career. Because I don't think you take Justin Fields over Sam Darnold.
No, I think Zach Wilson's jumped over Justin Fields in terms of you watched like the highlights from his bowl game at the weekend. It was amazing. But when we said this last week, when you've got a tackle who is highly rated as Penny Sewell is, that's going to be really tempting for the
Darnold
Jets.
is still a franchise quarterback for me. If the Jets don't want him, I'll drive him to the Patriots myself because I think he can be good.
Happily take him at the Niners as well.
And then the only other thing, I think we mentioned it, is the Jets actually probably won this game because the punter knocked out, pretty much took out the punt returner who was almost free.
Yeah, he did.
The punter for the Jets was a linebacker in college who broke his back or something ridiculous and was told he wouldn't be able to play football, refused to listen and came back and decided to be a kicker to keep his dream alive, came to the league. The first opportunity he got to hit someone, he still just went and did it, which I thought was a good story.
That is a good story.
Well, and as well, for Griff's been saying for weeks, the Jets might win the final game against the Pats, and actually, it looks more likely the closer we get to it.
Luckily,
they listen to you a bit more, Michael.
If only people did. Yeah, I mean, the bigger thing from this game is we now know from what Jim's just said that Roethlisberger isn't playing for the Steelers next week, it's going to be Mason Rudolph starting against the Browns. The Colts are playing the Jags. One of those two teams, the Colts or the Browns, is not going to the playoffs. Now, there's a good chance they both win, and that leaves the Colts on the outside, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
But would you put your money on the Colts losing or the Browns losing? If one of them's going to lose, which one are you putting your money on? Because my money's always going to be on the Browns in that scenario.
Always the Browns. They always go Browns something up, aren't they?
I think the Colts, Titans, and the Browns all win out, and we end up with no change.
Yeah, you could well be right. Now that we've seen that basically the Steelers are throwing the game away by starting Mason Rudolph, I think that's a massive advantage for the Browns. But they could still kick it into touch themselves and just fail.
What are the Ravens on as well? Are they not on the same record as well?
Yeah,
Ravens,
they're on 10-5 as well.
10-5, yeah.
I think they get in based on who they've played.
Yeah, their strength of schedule or their wins over opposition are such that they are effectively in, I believe.
I think it's because they beat the Browns that they effectively get in.
And I know the Bengals want to return, but no, they win out. But we move on to the Ravens, which, of course, Gary knew. Giants 13, Ravens 27. So 5-10 Giants against the 10-5 Ravens. Great. Dolphins. No,
I didn't see any of this game, to be honest with you.
The Giants are just not. They're not. But they're. I mean, technically, they still can end up in the playoffs, but they won't. So,
well, you can if you win. You can.
Yes, if we win,
which you might. Well,
yeah, I know, but we won't.
Should we mention Des Bryant getting a second receiving touchdown of the season? Just because it's a fairly nice story in a fairly crap year. Des Bryant scored again. So first time he's had consecutive scoring games since weeks 13 and 14 of 2017 for Des Bryant.
He does have some practice scoring against the Giants.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's true. He's had a few.
Sorry, boys.
No, it's fine. Like, we're not we're a team on the up at least, but we're not good. Although nice to see Logan Ryan signed.
I think that's really important.
That's a nice Christmas present for Giants fans. As far as the Ravens look fine, and actually, they're returning to form at just the right time.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins is good. What was that? It's his 5th consecutive game with a touchdown.
Yeah,
and he's becoming. I think he's not becoming the lead back because you've still got Gus Edwards who had 15 carries for 85 yards. But between them, I think they're more than capable of getting a lot of yards on the ground. He's throwing Lamar Jackson into that, and they're back to their best running the football and not relying too much on Lamar Jackson being a quarterback.
Yeah, but and when he just does have to throw, he's got 2 huge bodies of Dez and Mark Andrews, so it does help. Dolphins 26, Raiders. I forgot to write down the score. So
25,
and it was close.
You forgot to write down the score. This was the greatest, most Raiders ending to a game ever. It was brilliant. It was absolutely... It keeps me going to know that even though the Patriots are terrible, the Raiders are always going to be worse. It's amazing. They allowed Fitzmagic a 31-yard completion while he was having his head ripped off on a face mask penalty, which added on 15 yards to the end of the completion and allowed Saunders to come out and stroke the ball home for the win with 1 second on the clock. It couldn't have been a more Raiders thing if you'd have paid to say, what's the most Raiders thing they can do right now? It was brilliant. It was just hilarious.
We have our sister show on YouTube, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Our accompaniment show on YouTube, and I picked the Raiders this week over the Dolphins.
You did. Yeah.
And I've never been more angry watching the final few minutes of a game in my life.
Well, anyone who's watched the Nat Coombs episode knows that is a lie.
Would that have anything to do with Philip Rivers, perchance?
Because as soon as Philip Rivers gets mentioned, we know that's when you get angry.
Tua has had 2 pretty bad games this season. This one and one against the Broncos, where he really just wasn't moving the ball. How good is it for a team to be able to say, right, we're going to bring in the other guy who can move the ball, and if we only play him sparingly, he can't turn it over enough to be a problem. but he can complete balls that Tua can't do. It's an incredible 1-2 punch, to be fair. Like, Tua doesn't really turn the ball over. He's only got 2 interceptions this season. But he's not driving it down the field with any authority at all, which is something he will probably learn to do if he's anywhere near as good as we think. But Fitzpatrick, did he score on 3 of his 4 possessions, and the only one he didn't score was because his player dropped the ball. Like, he was brilliant when he came on.
But you'll still get the Fitzmagic cycle. You can't. You're just delaying the cycle. It will happen.
I'm not saying you don't, but if I was told that for next season the Patriots had signed Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'd be elated because the games would be watchable if nothing else. I think he probably stays there for another year and they go through this procedure with Tua until he's capable of seeing these games out. But you see the 2 of them together and you think this is genuinely a combination at quarterback, which you rarely see.
If you'd have offered a Dolphins fan at the beginning of the season 10-5 at the end of week 16, they'd bitten your hand off.
Of course they would have. And I think they're getting in the playoffs as well. I really do. I think just think that they're that good. I don't have a problem with that at all. The Raiders, though, this is such a John Gruden thing to do. How often did the Bucs teams fail to see through to the end of the season when he was there? How often did the Raiders teams struggle towards the end of the seasons before when he was there? It's just typical Gruden.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
But brilliant. I'm glad I made that point for everyone.
No, I mean, it's right, isn't it? I mean, and I don't think it's down to fitness or anything because they're not losing players like the Eagles or the 49ers that have been this season and, replacements coming in. They've got most of their players. The problem is some of the players that they've got, especially on defense, just aren't good enough. And again, this is a defensive unit which needs to be improved. They need to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks and not the kind where you're ripping their heads off. You need to get there needs to be more interceptions. There's just no production on that defense, and I think until they get that, they're always going to be probably an 8-8 team. And there might be seasons where they get in the playoffs with that, but most times they're just not going to be there. And that's down to who's the GM there? The old
Mike Mayock.
Thank you. That's down to Mike Mayock to find those players on defense, bring them in, and then for Gruden to gel them together as a team. This is on offense. I think they're fine, not a problem. I think Derek Carr has had a good season this year. Josh Jacobs has probably had a slight downwards, slight kind of drop in production, but he'll come back next year. And they've got receivers now in Henry Ruggs, and even Nelson Aguilar's playing pretty decently. So it's just that defense that needs to be sorted out, and especially when you're playing the Chiefs twice a year, and they've shown they can beat the Chiefs. They need to improve on defense.
Fair enough. Well, let's move on. Bengals 37, Texans 31. So Bengals move to 4-10-1. Texans 4-11.
Speed round.
Both teams suck. Move on.
Yeah. Broncos 16.
That, but I was muted.
Broncos 16. Chargers 19.
Hey, the Chargers won.
Chargers have now won. Is it 4 games in a row by one score?
Basically,
opposite of they started.
Ever since we criticised Anthony Lynn and said his career as a coach was over, he just bought himself another year, and I think it's a bad move. It's a bit like Paul was saying earlier. You're stalling out. He still needs to go, but at least he can go with a better record.
Justin Herbert's got good records as well. Most touchdowns, most passes. He got over 4,000 yards this week.
Yeah, and he's a touchdown record.
Yeah, for a rookie.
34, I think.
28.
Oh, okay.
Lots.
Okay, so great, and the Broncos still suck. Okay, risky picks. Look through next week's teams.
Okay, I'm just going to say it straight off the bat. I think the Mason Rudolph-led Steelers are going to beat the Browns.
I'm taking Bears over Packers.
I'm taking Giants over Cowboys. I just wanted to jinx a team.
In your own time, boys.
Chargers over Chiefs.
Oh, shit, that's what I was going to take. That's the one I was going to take. And I'm going to pick Jets over Patriots.
Nothing risky about that.
That ain't risky. Come on.
Well, both teams are shit.
I've been predicting that for 9 weeks.
I know, but you took all the good ones. And
so you're predicting nature finds a way. Come on. Pick another game.
John, you can always pick that one.
Sorry?
Panthers are playing the Saints, aren't they?
Yeah, but the Panthers.
The Colts beating the Jaguars is a riskier pick than that, John. Come on.
No, it's not. Fuck off. But okay. In the AFC, so we've got Titans, Dolphins, Ravens, Browns, Colts. One misses out. Who are we going to say misses out?
Browns.
Colts.
Gary, I'm going with Colts.
Wow.
He doesn't know whether to go with Philip Rivers or not. Look at his little face. He can't do it.
It's mad. It's like that Colts team, despite Philip Rivers, could be in the playoffs. It's a very good all-round team. Oh, the fuck up Browns.
Okay. So
Rivers.
In the NFC, we've got the Packers, Saints, Seahawks, and Buccaneers already through. We've got currently Washington, Rams, Bears, with Cardinals, Cowboys, and Giants on the bubble. So,
Washington football team win the division,
Washington.
and the Bears take the wild card.
I'm also going with Gary, Washington football team and the Bears.
And we also got Rams and Cardinals. Rams are a game ahead.
Yeah, Rams are in.
Yeah. So as it is.
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm suggesting it stays as is, as well. Unless So we'll see next week. In terms of our risky picks, we have 2 people out in front now.
I didn't do one last week, did I?
No, you didn't. I haven't.
We picked one for you. We said the Jags were going to win.
No. We picked the Falcons to beat the Cowboys, even though they weren't playing.
You could have just texted me, you did.
No, this way is much more fun.
Yeah.
We just didn't count one for you. But it doesn't matter anyway because you are last.
I've only played half the year.
Well, yeah, but I've only got a quarter of those selections in that half a year, right? Me and Paul both on 30 something percent. We are 33.33 recurring as a group. Jim,
they're risky picks.
They are risky picks. Jim, I think, is on 42%. Griff is on 45%. So this week could be the decision maker in who is the best at this. I'm really
regretting taking the Giants now.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I just took the Jets.
I want no part of it. Shit.
Sorry, mate. You are. Griff will send you a wooden spoon back.
Moving forward, if you don't submit a pick, you just get the Jags and whoever they're playing.
Yeah. It's like in our fantasy thing. If you concede, you instantly lose.
Yeah.
So we'll take it from there. But all games on Sunday this week because it's the final week of the regular season. Although technically one of the games in England is at 1:20 in the morning on Monday.
Washington versus the Eagles.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am staying up for that one.
So we'll see you next week. Enjoy the weekend and Happy New Year. Bye from us.
See you in 2021.
Bye.